1899, my grandparents were born in America. They had come over from Lithuania, most of them. So I'm a Litva. Lithuania, and we were educated, Jews in the village, according to the family story. Anyway, my grandmother grew up in Chicago, and at that time, Jews, just like here in Burlington, exactly the same time OZ was being established, when this whole neighborhood was called Little Jerusalem, and there were 400 or 500 Jewish families that lived right here in this neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah, there's a CD that you can look called Little Jerusalem that Vermont Public Television made about it. Okay, so at that time there were a lot of immigrants. There was a huge burst of immigration because Russia was planning another war, and the Jews wanted to get caught in. They were draft dodgers. They didn't want to be in the army for 20 years. Nasty thing to do if you were a Jew. Anyway, so they left. And they arrived in Chicago, they grew up in Chicago, and already we see the beginnings of Jewish kids being born in America, yearning to live the American life and yet being very grounded in the tradition. So my grandmother was a flapper. You know, she was a young person in the 20s, all right? So she was American, and she kept kosher. She lived in just this little neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. Everything, all your social contacts were still within the Jewish world, right? A lot of wounds. People did not, I mean, there was always a semi-permeable cell wall between the Jewish communities and the Christian communities, but there were times when that semi-permeable cell wall got a little sketchy. Anyway, so she gets married, has my mom, and my mother is the next generation of Jews who are now coming of age in World War II. They're getting married. My parents were married in 1952, same year that OZ was built, this building was built. And that place was now she's second generation American. This happens with all ethnic groups who move to America, so this is not necessarily unique to the Jews. She now is part of, there's still a huge identity with the Jewish population that tends to be all of her social contacts and family contacts. However, there are some of that cohort are really beginning to leave Judaism, because in order to be allowed into the country clubs, in order to be able to buy into certain neighborhoods, in order to have a business and be able to make deals, you had to be Episcopalian, basically. You had to leave Judaism because there was such anti-Semitism. So in my mother's generation, already the cracks of assimilation are beginning to work their way through what had been up until that time a very, very strong identity. My parents moved out to the suburbs in Chicago. We go to a conservative shul, just like OZ. I was bat mitzvah, and I went through my rite of, the ritual of becoming an adult in the Jewish ritual world. And I swore that on the day of my bat mitzvah, I would never walk in a synagogue again. That was it. I was done. It was an empty shell. And so in my particular situation, it was an empty shell because nobody lived a Jewish life. We didn't live according to the daily practices, the daily observance, because a Jew, an observant Jew, there's 3 times a day you pray, and there's all these things that go on, and that was already going. We were assimilating. So my family always had Friday night dinner, which meant Sabbath. We never went to temple. We never went to synagogue. 3 days a year we went to synagogue, just like many Christians go to church on Christmas and Easter, right? We went to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the holidays that just passed. Everything was home-based, but I was an American kid, and it held nothing for me. It was dry. In the 70s, a lot of Jews left Judaism, my age, my cohort. I'm 61. My cohort of people left Judaism, left the synagogues, because it was empty. It was dead. We were, for many, many reasons. We wanted meaning, and we wanted ritual. So a lot of us we studied Buddhism, and we studied yoga, and we became Hindus, and we moved to India. So my whole generation of Jews go out into the world and follow other faith traditions, rituals, because we're yearning, child of the 60s, right? We're yearning for experience. We're yearning for something that is really spiritually engaging. And as we were raised in it, Judaism was a core, a shadow of its former self. And there were a lot of reasons why. Some of it was wanting to make it in America and the yearning to assimilate. And some of it were the wounds, the Holocaust, my friends. We're still recovering. And so some families rejected Judaism altogether because where was God, right? You know, how could something awful happen like that? So they were raised with complete atheism, like we're done, that's it. Yeah. So a whole generation of Jews is being raised in the 60s and in the 70s without too many anchors in what had come before because it had really been destroyed for a variety of reasons. I remember being in a room with our friends that Toby has known since before he was born, Lynn and David and a whole group of people. They were into one of the people was channeling a spirit from another world. So they would gather every week and they would chant. This woman would channel. I can't remember what the being's name was channeling. And I'm seeing these are people that I love and I respect, and they're so wonderful. And once a week they go and they hang out and they channel this like, you know, it was like the Course of Miracles also. I mean, and I'm sitting there. Ottawa was the name of the spirit. And at that moment, I didn't have kids yet, I don't think. I said, there's got to be a Jewish version of this. That was my entrance back into the curiosity. Did Judaism have something like channeling spirits from outer space? I don't know, but that was where I found I'm Jewish. I can't join them in their journey because I realized what they were looking for, and I'm making a complete blanket statement here. They were looking for a sense of community that was grounded in a spiritual language. And I realized that Judaism was there. It just wasn't there in that form. Judaism is like, it's 5,000 years old, depending on how you look at there had to be something like this in Judaism. So that begins one little part of the quest. I'm also living in North Pomfret, Vermont. I'm one of 2 Jews in the town. The town clerk gets us mixed up. We don't look anything alike. And my kids, so Laredo and I were not Jewishly identified when we got married, but I had these kids, and they're the only Jews in the school. And the kindergarten teacher comes up to me one day, this is when Toby's older brother Tista, and says, Jan, you're Jewish, why don't you come and teach the kids something about Hanukkah? Sort of balance it. I said, sure. And I didn't know anything about Hanukkah. So part of my spiritual path was being asked questions by people who identified me as a Jew, and certainly you can come teach about Hanukkah. I go, okay, fine. And then I ran out and got a book about Hanukkah because I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I knew the miracle story, that you light the candles. But I didn't know anything about Hanukkah. So one stream was a curiosity awakens in me. Well, I don't know anything about Hanukkah. What can I find out about it? So I could teach it. I had Tista by then, our older brother, and Hannah Teferet, who was the rabbi's wife at that time at Dartmouth, is beginning a class in Jewish feminist mysticism. How can you not go, right? Oh my God. So, boom, I'm in, right? And she introduces me to the work of Reb Zalman Schachter Shalom, who, as I said, just recently died, who was a real tzaddik, and Shinzen knew him, and truly an amazing man. I won't dwell on much of it. He was the guy who was straddling both the old world. He had escaped Europe, and he was also very much part of the new world. and he creates a Judaism that is a renewed Judaism. I won't go into that too much right now. But anyway, Chana's teaching this. So Deb Markowitz, who's our Secretary of Natural Resources, she was at that class. That's when I met Deb. Okay, so suddenly there's a Jewish world out there that's mystical and it's feminist, and I'm there chanting, body stuff. We did all these, did all this liturgy with our bodies. I'm like, yeah. So hold that thought. Laredo, after Toby was born, started to do improvisational dance once a week with our friend Tracy. I joined him a year later. And that was our date night. Every week we got a babysitter and we went out and did improvisational dance down in Norwich, Vermont. And I began to learn the play, and you guys all know about this now, right? The playfulness that erupted out of me that I didn't even know was there, right? Then Chana takes me to a retreat where Salzman is, and I dance the Sphira. We do improvisation. He said, okay, get over in that corner and I want you to dance Hod all the way across the room. Okay, now go over in that corner. I want you to dance Tiferet all the way across the room. And I suddenly realized I'm in. If I can dance Judaism, I'm done. And so you can see what's happening. Like, I'm finding ways that are coming out of who I am and who my generation is, hooking back in to a Judaism that's getting renewed through the experience of being American, egalitarian, equal access under the law. The planet is central to everything. You know, these are radically new ideas in the world, and certainly in Judaism. So I began to dance, and then I went to I was really upset one day, and Chana said, Jan, I've got this workshop you have to go to. It's someone who's doing dance bibliodrama. Okay. I'm there. So I go and I spend a week in a yurt in New York State dancing Torah, improvisational Torah. Again, I'm there. Yes, where do I sign up? I studied with her for a couple of years. You can see what's happening. I go to another week, it was a retreat center in New York State. I am encouraged to go learn how to be a prayer leader, a davening leader. And I enroll in something called the Davening Leadership Series because I didn't know I had this gift. I say this with great humility. I had no idea that I had the gift of leadership, and I had no idea I had a voice. I mean, our family all sang, but I had no idea that it was coming out of a deep place of spirit because it didn't have a container yet. So I went to this 1 week, and then the next week was going to be a week with all the people who were in the rabbinical program. They were coming to the retreat the next week, and the dean of the program said, if any of you who've gone to this week want to come back and just come to the next week, you're more than welcome to check it out. I remember driving home. I was so open, and every mile that went by, I felt myself shutting down and shutting down and shutting down and shutting down because I knew I was going back home to no Jews, no juice. There was no juice in my Jews. And I got to Pomfret, I did laundry, and I got in the car and I went right back. And that was the beginning of becoming a rabbinical student in that program. So that's the story. I mean, that story gets replicated over and over and over again by people who didn't even know they were spiritual seekers, or who knew they were spiritual seekers and Judaism had become a husk because of the loss and because it had just gotten dry. And to tell you the truth, Judaism goes dry every 300 years. It has for 1,000 years, okay? Every 300 years it starts getting dry, and then people break, they juice it back up again, and then that gets sort of regimented, and then it gets dry again, and then it comes back up again. So that also seems to be a natural cycle of such a long, otherwise it would have fallen apart a long time ago. If it hadn't had the ability to adapt, and this is the foundation of that text study. This is one of the things that Judaism is amazing at, is that its ability to do this dialectic, to do the bringing in what's happening and making it come alive again. So the long and the short of it is I had no idea that I had this leadership ability, this voice, and a passion for the history of thought. Because really what Judaism is, on one level, is studying and becoming conversant in the salon, the 2,000-year salon that continues to this day. These guys thought about it this way, and then the next generation thought about it this way, and then this happened, and the thoughts went this way, and then we were living in Muslim lands, and then we were living in Christian lands, and then, and just tracing the history of that thought has always been fascinating to me.